Welcome to Blog Frog Live Radio for April 2011. Hi, my name's Mike Howie, and last month's Twitter turned 5, so it's very fitting that we should be talking to the man we're about to meet today, who I would describe as that rare person who knows completely the gritty reality surrounding that much-used term, social media. Now, when we say this chap is definitely a global thought leader in all things recruitment and human resources, well, don't take our word for it. He's been voted the fourth most influential commentator and blogger, thanks to the volume of followers he has and the amount of discussion he promotes in the many ways and means he's going to tell us about today. Now, Frog Live Radio exists to profile those that challenge thinking, enhance knowledge, and generally give those involved in recruitment from employees to employers the good oil on what's happening. So it gives me great pleasure, and Frog Live Radio great pleasure, to welcome Bill Boorman, the man who said he's proud not to be technically savvy, but he knows the inner workings of social media. Hello, Bill Boorman.
Hi, Mike. Good to speak to you.
Welcome, Bill, and thanks for your time today, all the way from, you're in the UK at the moment?
I'm in the UK. Yeah, I live halfway between London and Birmingham, if people want to spot where I am. So that's me.
Oh, wonderful. Now, Bill, the first question we ask all our thought leaders is, what was your first paying job when silver first passed into your palm? How old were you? Where were you, and what was it?
Well, I was 16. My first paying job was when I was 11.
First time someone gave you a shekel.
Yeah, first time someone gave me a shekel was when I was 11, and I used to run a team of car cleaners at school to clean cars. So that was the first exposure to a bit of entrepreneurship, I suppose. But my first real job was as a recruiter at 16.
Right, at 16. So can you give us just a quick overview of your career up until, of course, we'll talk about what you started doing a wee while ago. Just give us your background, Bill.
Yeah, well, my background is I started out in recruiting. At the days when I started, obviously, there was nothing to do with technology. It was very much a secretarial market, and I'm an agency recruiter. There was no specialisation or sectorisation within the market. It was very much secretarial, no industrial, technical, sales, anything like that. And I started out running a desk. And it was really about timing that I went into an agency one day, said, look, applied for a job doing telesales, thought I could do it. I was hoping to be a professional football player, and thought, well, I'll wait till I be discovered and better earn some money, and went in and started out. I survived in my first agency for 2 weeks, at the end of which point they told me I had no future in recruitment, which I look back and find quite funny now. That was what spurred me on, and I went into the agency next door and said, give me a job, I'll just start working, don't worry about paying me till you think I'm worth it. And I started selling, and I think because of the timing that I was in the market, I was really there when people started using word processors, started using computers, and started to realise that I was quite good at developing niche and specialist desks, which I did for quite a few years, ending up setting up a training school for recruiters and placing recruiters in recruitment companies, at which point one of my clients I did most of my work for started a business to grow into a national business in the UK, and I joined that business, ending up as a board director for 12 and a half years, where we grew the business from 6 offices to about 175 and turnover about 130 million. And I did literally everything within that business, from the first corporate accounts, running on sites, opening branches, HR, introduced an IT system, opened new specialist areas of recruiting. That really served its time in terms of corporate life, and started what I thought was going to be a training business, a traditional training business. The training business was very successful for about 4.5 years. I had 7 trainers working for me around Europe, and then the recession came along, as it did everywhere in the world, and the work stopped overnight. I had no work to do. For the first time in my professional life, I was sitting at a blank desk and thought, well, I can't not do anything. So let's just go and have a look at what this social media is about. At that point, thinking I'm probably going to start looking globally and think globally through the social media, and it's probably going to be I'm going to sell videos or do something traditional, and that's really where I was 19 months ago with 50 LinkedIn connections. And it's been an onward journey.
Can I ask you a question? So 19 months ago, you were unemployed, sitting there, I would say, a home office with 50 LinkedIn connections. Yeah,
that's where I was at, and the 50 LinkedIn connections were old colleagues, really. Well,
right, so how many, let's just jump to the end for a second, and we're going to come back. How many LinkedIn connections do you have now, 19 months later?
Well, my LinkedIn profile now is still fairly small. I have about 2,500 on LinkedIn, but I also run 3 groups which have 10,500, 7,000, and just over 2,500 members. So I've got access to quite a lot of people within LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is my gateway for finding people, and Twitter is my place for connecting and engaging. And I have about 7,500 followers on Twitter at the moment, and rising. And then I have approximately 3,000 Facebook friends, as well as fans of the various pages that I run. So,
wow.
And it's quite targeted. So I keep an eye on the focus of my group. So 70% of the people who are fans, friends, or connections are in what I would call the people space.
Right. So let's just quickly return 18, 19 months ago, 50 LinkedIn connections. What happened?
Well, the first thing I did was started a group, because there was a recession going on, and I thought, right, okay, let's start a group called the Good News Group Recruiters, and let's just post good news in there, because everyone was getting a beating and having a hard time. And I thought, this would be quite a cool thing to do, and just ask people to post positive stories, little successes, interviews, new clients, visits, whatever it might be. Just post little successes and share their good news. And I said any bad news I would, or moaning or groaning, I would immediately edit. And that's where that's really how I started expanding the group and building the network and connecting with people. And I set myself a target of how many people I wanted to connect with each day. I ran an experiment as to the best way to connect with people, whether it was personalised invites or non-personalised invites. And I'm quite analytical about split testing the things I do and identifying what works rather than following what people would advise as best practice. And then from LinkedIn, what really took everything off for me was Twitter. And I was listening to somebody on the radio one morning, a DJ, talking about Twitter, and thought, I really need to go and have a look at this. Went and followed some celebrities for a while, realised they weren't really my friends, stopped following them, and started following people in the recruitment sector that I thought were interesting. Connected with some people in North America who ran a Blog Talk radio show, went on the Blog Talk radio show as a host, which is the animal recruiting show, managed to survive through that and increase my connections and started a radio show of my own. And then from the radio show, I used to run 3 shows, one which went out as Down Under Recruited in Australia and New Zealand region, one which was Midday UK for the UK show, and one for the US. And I did that for about 11 months, at the same time launching a blog, and then started my focus on Facebook about 6 months ago.
So how many days, just let's think about when you first started off, how many hours a day were you spending? You're obviously now a professional, you turned yourself into a professional blogger, tweeter, and things on LinkedIn. How many hours a day did you do it, and has that increased in time or decreased?
No, I've always put a lot of hours in, and I've always put a lot of hours into my social. But then, if it's your marketing, if it's the working world that you live in, you need to be omnipresent, really. And you can do it in between a job. But if you want to take my case, I made a point of saying, right, okay, I'm going to fill up any downtime that I have and any hours that I have, and that includes looking at time zones and thinking, how do we... I use a tool on Twitter called Twitter Analyzer, which tells me the best times to be live for my network. And because my network is global rather than domestic, I need to be mindful of being live when different people are coming online. So I can pretty much tell what time it is in the world by who suddenly becomes active.
So what do you call yourself, your day job now, Phil?
I'm a conference disorganizer because what happened for me was I think the first thing you want to do is go out and build your network first, and then once you've started building your network, it'll become pretty clear within your network what's not being offered. And I think this is the problem where a lot of people have problems, is they go in with a clear objective of what they want out of it, but their network is very much built around who looks like they could be useful to me. And what I've discovered in the whole social media circles, you never actually know who's going to be useful, who's going to share your message, who's going to put your news out there. So, and once you've worked a network for a while and looked at what's going on and what people are talking about, what products and services you need to offer become obvious from that. So it's really about, rather than building your network around your services, build your services around your network. Because if you're listening and you're in enough conversation, it will become clear what's missing. For me, what was missing was I went in and had a look at the whole conference thing and created the unconferences, which is what I do now. I disorganise. If you ask me in a presentation what I do, I disorganise conferences and I break stuff. Recruiting processes. So that's what I do. I look at things in a bit of a disruptive way, but I do it from a background of having had very much a process-driven background. I can understand and look at process and say, why do we do things the way we do them? For the majority of people, the reason they do things the way they do them is because they always have, not necessarily because it's best.
So why do you think, you're talking now about your own conference company, why do you think people go to conferences, and what did you see as the gap in that market for, I would suggest, recruiters or people who are in the business of internal recruitment going to conferences? Is that
first of all, let's talk about the social media effect and how social has changed things. Previously, we used to very much hunt in a tribe of like people. So we would go to a recruiting conference with other recruiters. HR professionals would go to HR conferences. Technologists would go to technology conferences, and we crossed the road to avoid each other wherever we could, unless we could see an obvious business benefit. I think what we've got now is what I describe, where I sit, as the people space. So it's corporate recruiters and agency recruiters. It's HR professionals who've got an interest, who obviously have all kinds of HR issues like performance management training on board. It's learning and development people. It's technologists who build technology. It's people who run job boards. It's anyone who works around kind of the people and talent space. So I think that was the first thing. There was nobody catering for the new communities that were being built. And the other thing was everyone was basically, you can see from conferences that everybody was attending. I mean, I'm a keynote speaker, so I speak at conferences and I'm bored of me because I see myself quite often. I'm seeing the same speakers delivering the same material, and between one event and another, actually what you went for was the time you spent in coffee hour or in the bar or in the hotel afterwards. That's when you had your productive, open conversation. And we wanted to take that and put that in the conference format. So the conference is entirely about the conversation. We have no presentations, no PowerPoint. We run 1 hour tracks, which are discussion sessions, and people are free. We run 3 at a time in an hour. People are free to move from one to the other whenever they've got what they wanted, or if they think one particular track is not for them. People are encouraged to move about. They're also encouraged that if they want to just sit down and have a coffee and talk to someone and not go to a session, they can do that. You know, that's part of the whole experience, and it's it's live social media. This is what social's enabled us to do, to connect with people and talk to them. So we don't have presentations, we don't have PowerPoints, we don't have pitching, so we have sponsors, but the sponsors are part of the event. They don't stand outside with booths and stands and stuff like that. They just go in and help us with technology or certain speakers and so on. So it's just making sure you've got a real community feel about the events you're running, and also understanding that there's two sides to an event nowadays, and the biggest part of it is actually what goes on online rather than what goes on physically. So I'll compare one of our events, like True London, for example, as being, what we're thinking about first of all is, okay, live stream video all day. We had a Twitter map so you could see where people were tweeting from and you could connect with them. We had a review session where anyone could write up to a 300-word review on a mobile website from a mobile device of any of the sessions they were in and put the learning points out. We have a blog squad who will produce live blogs and will also produce one person dedicated to producing tweet clouds. Every hour of the main topics of conversation, we have people doing audio booths, so sound interviews and sound bites of sessions. We have photographers there taking pictures and posting them immediately to Flickr. So we'll have a reach of anywhere between, for example, the live stream we put live without any pre-advertising. We had 11,000 people viewing that. Wow. So I actually think that you have to think about that audience, and you also have to think about the fact that the community around the event will communicate with each other over a 6 to 9 month period and build lasting connections. So, which you can do with hashtags in Twitter. That's really the place to do that. So you have to think about your online.
Bill, Bill, can you repeat that? What's that called?
Hashtag community. So you know hashtags. So my events are things like True London. The event that's going to be in Australia and New Zealand will be True Oz, True NZ. We've just had True Stockholm. It's all TRU, the Recruiter Unconference. And the hashtags is where people start to connect. They put relevant blog posts. They talk about things before events. They'll ask questions because you know it's a particular community of people who've got an interest around the people space. So it's actually thinking about how you're going to use all the different ways you can use this technology to make it work. And the side benefit of that is, because of what I'm doing with the blog and what I'm doing with the unconferences, I spend 95% of my time with people who are operating on absolute best practice, or talking to them on the phone, Skyping them, doing whatever I'm doing, and looking at what's really working. As a result of that, I now have some brands and companies who are asking me to work with them on just talking to them about what their content should be. They're really interested in how we managed to achieve this global network and global events with zero marketing budget.
So what's a perfect example of where you're, let's say, consulting with a company and you're using social media and recruitment are intersecting in quite an energetic way?
Yeah, well, probably the best or most recent example is I'm working with Hard Rock Cafe at the moment, and we've run a pilot project for the opening of the branch the opening of the new cafe in Firenze, which is Florence. And the way that we've done that is determined that previously they've spent thousands of dollars on traditional advertising, job boards, things like that, magazine advertising, billboards, and it's been quite a protracted, drawn-out process because of all the admin involved in dealing with response and so on. So what we determined to do was to do all of the recruiting through a fan page. So we launched a fan page, which was the normal fan page for Hard Rock Firenze, saying Hard Rock Firenze is opening, follow this for news, and all of the recruiting, all of the applications, everything went through the fan page. So we had something like 9,500 fans joined within a 3-week period. We used some very targeted Facebook advertising because you can be really specific in who you're targeting. So the response has been much more relevant. We've used the Work4 app, which makes sharing and applying via the fan page very easy. So we've had 3,500. We ran it for a specific 2-week period. We've had 3,500 applications from that. And the really interesting thing that's been going on is all of the questions on the fan page are all geared around the actual application process rather than the jobs. Because you think people would talk about jobs. Now, this is things that with a traditional career site, you haven't been able to do other than emailing back and forth. So people will say, it isn't working at the moment, or I can't find this job, or whereabouts is that located, or can I submit my CV resume in Italian, or does it need to be in English? There's all this kind of conversation. When do the interviews start? It's been all this conversation around the process, and there's been lots of it every day. And lots of applause from other fans saying this is a great way to, fans of the brand saying this is a great way to do it. So within the 9,700, we've attracted 3,500 people who've applied for the job. All of the CVs came in. We made a promise that there would be no ATS and that every resume, CV, video application or LinkedIn profile that got submitted, so you could submit in a format or language that suited you, would be reviewed. We did that over a 4-day period and then submitted who was... and now we're in the process of sending out invites for interview, which are going out via Facebook, direct Facebook messaging to the fans, and within the direct messages is a link to using an Eventbrite site. So we're running the interviews like events, where there's 20 tickets available an hour over 3 days for a full day. First come, first served in terms of taking those spots from the successful candidates, and they're booking in online. And it's just really streamlined and smoothed the process. It means we can get all the admin, everything booked, done over a 3-day period.
Wonderful. So this is really interesting. So could we move on to the more, as I say, the nitty-gritty? What do you think? Think about recruitment companies in New Zealand. They could be anywhere from 5 to 100 desks. Can you give us a quick and dirty what recruiting companies need to do in social media, the basics they need to be doing? How do they do it? And also, as I said to you before we came on, I'm interested in your opinion on what recruitment companies need to stop doing. What's dead in the water for recruiters as a way of doing business?
Okay, well, the first thing I've got to think, you're talking about recruitment agencies here, so the first thing you've got to decide is whether suitable, whether... and also internal teams, if you want to recruit. Okay, well, I think that's two different discussions, really. If you're talking about agencies, a lot of people will talk about the lack of take-up with agencies, but the big thing you've got to look at within recruitment companies is right now the reward system is based on reward for placement. So it's very much a transactional process, and that doesn't really, apart from sourcing, there's fantastic potential for sourcing and finding candidates within the social places if you understand where to look. So I think for recruitment companies, it's really a case of finding out, fish where the fish are, find out where the candidates hang out, what social channels they use. One of the companies I'm working with or just about to start working with is Oracle. They use something like 225 social media channels. So it's not necessarily the obvious Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. It's finding out which social channels their target candidates hang out in, and that's where you can go and find people. So I think for recruitment agencies, unless they're in the social or digital space, it will largely be a sourcing. The channels will be a sourcing vehicle. But the advice I'd give is what I would give to any business actually in social media, and that is, first of all, it's not going to be a silver bullet. So it's not going to suddenly give you hundreds of candidates or give you a great return. You're going to have to work at it for a while, and because of the nature of that may not be quite right for you. You've got to look at things like where where can you integrate social media into your business? One of the great applications that come out at the moment that's free and beta for recruitment companies is Bullhorn Reach.
Right, what's that?
Yeah, Bullhorn Reach is a product that every recruiter has a social profile. So they have a profile which gives some detail about them, where they can be connected with in LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and so on. But it also links with your back end, so you can update on it over things like what jobs you're working on at the moment, what people you're particularly interested in talking to, and it then has social feed. And the social feed is geared towards two things: building content around your targeted areas, but equally building your SEO, so that the social profile will rank quite highly, and both candidates and clients can leave reviews, which then potential candidates or clients can go and have a look at. And it's then a case of making jobs available so that you can start sharing them in a targeted way through your network in whatever channel you want to, whether that's Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. So I think that's a really interesting product that actually agency recruiters should be looking at. And it's free at the moment. If you sign up for the beta, it's free.
Right. And what else? And we talked before about mobile technology. Where is that? In England's probably slightly ahead of New Zealand.
Well, you've got three things that you've got to think about with mobile. First of all, 55% of social media messaging updates is done through mobile. So that's the first thing. The other thing is it's changed the way in which people work. So if I talk about the UK for a minute, and I got some really access to a lot of interesting stats from one of my sponsors, JobSite UK, and what we've seen is that when people are accessing career sites, job boards, and so on, and what we're finding is they're actually doing it in their downtime, their commute time. So you get golden hours of when people are accessing either social media channels, responding to things, or wanting to look for jobs. And that is in the UK between the hours of 7:30 and about 8:45. So it's when people are getting trains in, commuting into work, and so on. There's a bit of a surge between about 10:30 and 11 o'clock when people are having coffee breaks or smoke breaks or whatever they're doing. There's then a rush between 12:30 and about 2:15, 2:30, and then it's from about 4:30 to about 9:30 at night. Entirely, the spikes are all down to mobile access. So you've got to say there's lots of people accessing your website, your career site, your job board, your social presence by mobile. So you've then got to look at it and say, okay, what functionality, what does my website actually look like on a mobile? How quickly does it load? If all I'm doing is trying to duplicate my website onto a mobile, it's going to take a long time to load. People don't have patience for that. So you need to create separate mobile sites. And the mobiles, and actually you need three different types of mobile site. And the three different mobile sites you need to create, one is if someone's accessing it by phone, which is the most common way, through an Android, a BlackBerry, or something like that. Two is if people are accessing via a device. So a device will be something like an iPhone or a similar tablet-type application, because you want a little bit more functionality like that, because that's halfway between a mobile and a laptop. And then you want the full access for people who might be accessing via laptops, but you still want quite a trim, quick load speed based on the fact that if people are mobile, they're going to be doing it through their mobile networks. So they need the load speed right. So you've got to think about what it looks like, what your functionality is, and what people will use mobile phones for. Now, they can't write CVs, they can't write documents, but what's really important is you've got a really simple bookmarking function, because what people will do is see jobs, either want to be able to apply directly without having to do any work, so that might mean putting in a link. Bullet Hoders have brought out a great social link which enables you to directly link a job application via your mobile, via your LinkedIn profile. So instead of having to write a big application, you can just say you're effectively sending off straight away your LinkedIn profile. Bookmarking means that people can look at a job, say that's interesting. When I get home, when I get back to the office, I want to have a look at that. So I just want to bookmark it. I just want to file it somewhere. So it's thinking about that functionality and how easy is it going to be for people to do that. What's it going to look like? How quickly is it going to load? And how easy are the functions going to be to actually work, to actually be able to work from mobile devices, from iPads, from things like that. I think the next area...
Yep, go on, please go on.
The next area that also I think is going to be a big thing within mobile technology, and it's going to really take off in things like retail and real estate and areas like that, but will become equally important in recruiting for things like careers fairs and within HR for things like onboarding. It's going to be augmented reality. So augmented reality is products like Layer, which kind of sound a bit Doctor Who fantasy stuff, but are here. Augmented reality means if you go to a careers fair, you can just point your phone at a particular stall and see what jobs they've got on. You can link to their websites. You can look at information about what's going on. We're at the point now, and this is actually working, where if you're manning a career site, you can use facial recognition, so you can take a picture of somebody. That will then match it with a database, and when it matches it with a database, it will return a LinkedIn profile or an online presence to say this is the person who's coming up to talk to you. So it's all pretty cool stuff, but I think technology which will increase our capability to do our jobs, and it's all very cheap. It's not expensive technology.
So, just before we move on to other parts of social media, do you think the recruitment industry is up with the play? Are the bulk of recruiters taking on these types of ideas, having a play with them, or do you think a lot of them have their heads in the sand?
No, well, you've got to talk about, when you talk about the recruitment industry, it's generally a reflection of society. So you have to look at the number of people who are involved in different social channels. And where they are and what they're actually using those social channels for. So I don't think the recruitment industry is any different to any other industry apart from perhaps, digital marketing and so on. Recruiters certainly have a big presence and not always a healthy one within channels like LinkedIn. So I think we use obvious places where there's an immediate return. I just don't think... I think what you tend to get with recruiters is they see it as a silver bullet. They invest a whole load of time in trying to make it work. It doesn't give an immediate return, and then they quit, really. And that's why you see lots of recruiters' profiles which are dead, or it becomes a social hangout place where recruiters talk to other recruiters. So, and I don't. Let's make things perfectly clear. Social media is part of the mix. Right, you still need job boards, you still need digital marketing, you still very much about telephones and meeting people and getting out and networking and getting out face to face. So what my advice to any recruitment company is, or anyone recruiting, is look at your business and rather than trying to implement a whole load of new stuff, just think of it as additional communication channels. So it's additional places where you can get extra reach. It's additional places where you can be very targeted towards people, but it's an extension of what you do rather than a replacement of what you do.
Right. Look, Bill, you just mentioned LinkedIn, which I'm keen to talk about. Would I be right in a lot of agents, as you say, a lot of recruiters, let's say internal, external, whatever, get very excited by it, use it as a referral engine. What's happening with LinkedIn? Can you take us to a place with a better understanding of both its power?
Yeah, well, LinkedIn's changed completely over the last 3 or 4 months in terms of the functionality. So the most important part that you need to think about in terms of LinkedIn, what's going to drive LinkedIn, and is beginning to drive all of the new products, is the semantic matching. So it's the semantic matching of people to jobs. And every day there's a new product or a new button or a new functionality, or they're taking part of the capability away in terms of how LinkedIn works. The other thing you've got to bear in mind with LinkedIn is people don't operate within LinkedIn anymore. LinkedIn is really an extension of things like email. The average user of LinkedIn visits 2.5 times a month. So you've got to think about the fact that the most important thing on your LinkedIn profile, which most people see if they're going to see you, the most important thing that shows up in groups, the most important thing that shows up in ads is what your headline is going to be. So you need to write and design your whole LinkedIn strategy around your professional headline and your matching. This is the way that LinkedIn and other social media channels are switching. Is it's less about being heard and more about being found. You've got to be findable. So that means keywords. That means making sure you're using common job titles, making sure your profile is organised in such a way that you're including things like the new skills section is updated, because it's all about semantic matching now. It's a matching engine that drives the way that LinkedIn works.
Right. That sounds. And now you're saying too, how fast is it changing? If I want to go on LinkedIn, can I still do third-party connections or?
No.
No,
you can't message third-party connections. You can't find them. You can. There are ways to find them, by the way. If you want to find people and you want to do a search within LinkedIn to find a particular skill set, the best place to do that is in Bing. Bing is far more effective search engine for searching LinkedIn than Google. So go into Bing and put in the skills you're looking for and LinkedIn, and it will return your LinkedIn profiles, which are third party. You won't be able to find them in the LinkedIn search engine.
And what tips have you got for candidates being found via LinkedIn? Is there any hot tips or things you think people?
Yeah, I mean, it's really simple. And I'll give you an example. I'm working with, we've got a scheme going on at the moment which is called True Grads, which came out of True London. And we're providing one-to-one mentoring for final year students. So Roxanda Francescu, who I'm working with, who's the student I'm mentoring, what we've done is, first thing we've done is changed the LinkedIn profile. So that meant, most important LinkedIn profile, what does your professional headline say? It needs to say the type of work you're looking for, what your availability is, and a key selling point, because that's always what's going to come up in searches or groups. That's what people see, the professional headline. So you get your professional headline right, change the order of your profile so your contacts are at the top, and you can do that in drag and drop. You can move the sections about in your LinkedIn profile. So put your contacts right at the top so you're very easy to contact. Just see your profile, see your headline, ring you up if I want to, or email you. Underneath that is making sure all of your social places are linked, then breaking down your work experience, and then adding, and then you want to add things like the plugins, like the book list. If you're involved in design, you can now add a profile. But the skills section is absolutely key, because LinkedIn matches on 3 key areas that you need to get right, and you need to make sure you're coming up with. Number 1 is geography. So you want your geography to be right. It does a local search against a job, and you can spread it out. Number 2 is it matches skills. So you need your skills section to be completed. Probably no more than 5% of LinkedIn profiles even know the skills section exists, because it's something that was added about 2 months ago. And then it's job titles. So you want to be looking to see that you're using common job titles. And just using normal SEO rules in terms of optimizing. Use bullet points and repeat words which you're going to want to come up in searches, which you're going to want to be found on. Once you've done that, every job seeker should create a LinkedIn resume. You can create a CV from your LinkedIn profile, and you go to a site which is LinkedIn Resume Maker. I can't remember the exact URL, but you can search for it. That then converts your LinkedIn profile into a downloadable resume. You can actually have 8 different ones that you store. Each one has a unique URL, and it makes your CV downloadable via a button on your LinkedIn profile. So anyone can find your profile and go and look for it. So that's the second thing, is create a LinkedIn profile. The third thing then is go join groups. So join relevant industry groups for the sector you're targeting and start posting in those groups. So there's a toolbar that all job seekers should use. Actually, all recruiters, anyone involved in the sector should use. It's a fantastic tool and it's free. It's the Jobs Insider toolbar. What the Jobs Insider toolbar does is two things. There's a function that lets you see behind jobs, and it also works with 7 job boards as well. So you can see how you're connected with an organisation. It even recommends people, if you're not interested, that you might want to forward the job to. You can link direct to the career site if you don't want to apply through LinkedIn. You can find the best way to actually apply for the job. But the function that I use all the time, and this is the number one referrer to my blog, is I can post in all of my groups and update from LinkedIn. I can even tweet direct from the Jobs Insider. So I can tweet from LinkedIn into Twitter to spread the message that I've done something or that I've updated something. So I use that then to post in relevant groups. And if you're a job seeker, what Roxana's done is saying, this is the industry I'm looking to get into. I'd appreciate any help or advice you could give me. Please have a look at my CV and profile and see if you can pass on some tips. Not asking for a job, but asking for help. And people want to help. She's been overwhelmed, and in a week she's had 10 first interviews, which are in progress. And any job seeker could do this. It's not rocket science. You download the toolbar, join relevant groups, post in those groups asking for help, and people will help you.
Okay, look, Bill, just before we move into the last part of this wonderful, useful stuff you're coming up with, can I just ask you a question about 18 months ago, what did you find the hardest part about branding yourself? Because it sounds like you've really branded yourself well. Off the top of your head, what were the biggest challenges about? Was it getting to grips with the technology, or what was it?
Not really. Not really. You just have to do it. You just have to get on with it. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science. This is really simple stuff. What you've got to remember, and one of the things that I've learned, is networking online is exactly the same as networking in person. You're just doing it over a wider geography and on different time zones if you want to do that. So I think, all this talk of branding, and because we have real contradictory discussions, right, and real contradictory reading when you talk to any social media expert. So everyone will say to you, the most important thing is authenticity and transparency, and then they'll say, change your profile, don't say that, don't talk about what you think. You go, well, hang on a minute, is that authentic and transparent or not, or is this just a lot of social media BS, which is kind of what the whole thing's full of a lot of the time. I think you just have to go out and find your own way, find your own voice. You will learn from the people around you what you need to do, and don't try and think too much about how can I be a brand, how can I project myself, how can I pitch. Just go out and enter into the social places you are, look at what's going on, start commenting on things, start reading things, start talking to people, start connecting with people, and then what your voice needs to be will find its own place. So, all this branding talk, if we all follow the branding advice, we'd all look exactly the same, and that would make social media really boring. So the easiest way to understand any social media channel is think of it as all joined up. Don't think of Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn. Think of it as one place in which people communicate, just using slightly different tones in each of the areas. I think of it as a giant pub, and if I recruited accountants and I knew there was a bar down the road where the accountants all went to drink on a Wednesday night, I would go there every Wednesday night. Now, if I walk in there with a sandwich board saying I'm hiring staff, pretty quickly they're going to throw me out on my ear and not want to talk to me. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to get to know people. And I'm going to start talking to people. We're going to introduce each other, and we're going to have a conversation, and it might be about the soccer last night, it might be about rugby, it might be about anything, television, whatever it is. And in the process of that conversation, somewhere they're going to ask me what I do, I'm going to ask what they do, and if there's a connection, they're going to say, right, okay, let's work together. That's what social media is. So I think the more you think about brand, an image. Just be a grown-up, just think about what would I say in public any other time. Companies don't have social media policies, don't have social media strategies. Integrate what you're doing into what you already have. Integrate it into your communications policy and just look on it as another channel and just be a grown-up.
Is a big part of it, though, you think, which a lot of people probably miss in the real world of networking, is giving stuff away, helping people?
You basically got to help. I think the whole attitude, and this applies to people who network in any area of society. Really, it's not virtual or real. I think that's the thing. If we start, I hate the term when people say, "Oh, I'd really like to meet you in real life," or "in real life you'd do this," because that suggests we behave in a different way online to the way we do offline. And I think that's where things kind of break down. And what I've learned in the past as a consultant and trainer, I've needed to charge for my knowledge and just give a little bit away. What I've been selling is my knowledge in the past. Now I just give it away, and you just help people. I'll help job seekers. I go in things like Job Hunt Chat in America, where I'm never going to get a commercial benefit from that, but that kind of amplifies my message about what I'm talking about. And you never know who's looking or who's listening to what. So if you can help people, just help them. That could be by spreading their message. That could be by sharing their links, promoting their blog, just doing stuff and not just promoting people where you can see an obvious commercial benefit.
Okay. Look, just as a final question, Bill, there's a global recession on. Recruitment obviously is feeling the heat. Where do you see recruitment going? How's the shape of recruitment, do you think, going to change after talking to the thought leaders you meet and talk to? You're the man to ask this. Recruitment in the next 5-10 years.
Well, first of all, let's do away with.
Like?
Let's chuck out the window the term thought leader.
Okay.
Let's forget about thought. I'll give everyone a wealth warning. If anyone calls themselves a thought leader or an expert or a guru, there's somebody you don't want to do business with. We're all finding this stuff out. The world's evolving at such a pace. Whether it's technology, whether it's the way in which people are working, and the way in which society is now, is evolving at such a fast pace. Around the rate at which things are going global, and the way that people work is changing, really, which has been accelerated by the recession. It's created lots of opportunity for people, or lots of need for people to do things a bit differently. It's kind of pinning your flag, and never mind thought leader. It's who sounds like they're making the best guess, who's the most informed about what they're talking about. And when you ask me where's recruitment going, I think there's some things that are quite clear. One is the driver. If we talk about the agency industry, the drivers for that are, number one, there's going to be a significant increase. Certainly in the UK, we've seen it quite a lot. Significant increase in direct hiring. There's a lot of question of value. I think there's lots of different models that can be created as to how you recruit. I've got my own idea of what I think ultimately we're going towards a business which is much more about relationship and less about transaction. I think the last 10 years of applicant shortage in the internet has taken all the skill and quality of the job out of recruiting. It's been about who can get to the CV database first and who can send the CV over first. Clients have accepted that and paid thousands of dollars for that service. Now they're saying, actually, we're not going to do that. We might as well do that ourselves. So what I think is going to happen is, for recruiters, there's a massive skill shortage. Let's not delude ourselves in thinking levels of unemployment is equal to lots of availability of skills. There's not. Because most of the desired and needed skills are people who are in work. And they're much harder to move about now because they're valuing security, don't want to be first one in, last out. So they're looking for a much stronger relationship with people who are hiring them. They are. I think we're in a situation where, within the recruitment market, it's about really identifying, right, okay, there's certain things going on, and you can track this. You can look at Australia, you can look at pretty much any of the developed economies, and what you will find is the number of jobs being advertised, being marketed, being reported, recorded, wherever you do them. It's National Office of Statistics in the UK. The number of open vacancies is increasing significantly every month, but equally, the level of unemployment is still rising. And the big challenge, the things we all face that we need to be thinking and talking about is the skill gap between the people who are available and the jobs and skills that are needed in the market. And the gap there is massive. So it's really about rethinking it. The other thing that's changed now in terms of job seekers is people are much more, the number one way in which people search, and I can only talk to you about the UK at the moment, but the number one thing that people search for is location. Location has become the most important thing. Location and convenience of work, because people don't believe they're going to have a job for life anymore. So if I can do a job down the road, which I've got the skills for. So location and skills rather than how recruiters search and match, which is based on skills and job titles and sectors. So we need to kind of reinvent our whole thinking in line with how do we fill this skills gap? Well, the way we fill this skills gap is looking geographically further afield as to where the talent you've got to find where the talent is. And that may be anywhere, which means you might need to start thinking about relocation, and you might need to think about retraining. How do you retrain the available people to make them ready? And now that's going to take 2 or 3 years to do that, but what are we teaching in schools? Is the things we're teaching in schools and universities really relevant to, is it producing people with the skills we've got? I'd suggest globally, no, it's not. The only countries that are producing people with skills are the developing economies like India and China and so on.
Right.
We produce people who are really good at needlework, and there are a lot of needlework jobs about.
Talking about location, second to last question, you used to broadcast your live radio blog, which was the great inspiration for us, down to Australia and New Zealand. From what you've known of New Zealand, what is our biggest challenge?
Well, I think it's like anywhere. It's having the real skills in the marketplace that are needed in this economy. Now, the big problem you have in Australia and New Zealand, and this is something that I think will be a real challenge and will currently hamper the speed and competitiveness of the region compared with other parts of the region, is your broadband speed. I think the two things that are absolutely key for any economy that's going to develop at any pace, which is going to be built around technology in terms of communication and product, is the mobile coverage, the cost of mobile, the speed of mobile and connectivity, and the speed of broadband, and how much of it is open access and Wi-Fi, and where people can just connect their iPhones. And in New Zealand and Australia, you lag behind us, and we're not great. And this is a problem I've had with certain products I've used, like video interview tools and things like that, when I've been running blogs. I've had people from Australia and New Zealand who haven't been able to take part because the broadband speed just hasn't been able to download that technology. It's not been fast enough. And I think if you're talking about what really should be your big thing, is making sure that those in the know are really making sure that the government understands how important this is going to be to your competitiveness.
Right. Hey, final question, Bill, and thanks for today. There's so much great information. What is the one website or tweet or anything what's your go-to every day? Your number one.
I read the Boolean Black Belt every time he publishes. So Boolean Black Belt, which is Glenn Cathy. The Boolean Black Belt, which is Glenn Cathy. That's my choice. That's my choice of blog. But the rest of the time, I'm grazing and looking at what goes on. In your region, two people I follow. I follow and watch closely what Aaron Dodd is talking about. I look closely at what Greg Savage is talking about, and Greg's been to one of my events and is coming to some more. I like a lot of what he's talking about. And Paul Jacobs, Paul Jacobs in New Zealand has inspired. He's one of my top 5 people that I follow and say, what's he up to? And because you do a lot of clever stuff in New Zealand. Deloitte's New Zealand, KPMG, some of the social stuff you're doing down there is really clever. It's way ahead of things which are going on elsewhere in the globe. You're the first people to really use live stream for interviewing properly, and now I'm picking it up. And I get a lot of that stuff from people like Paul, and I think you just have to think about global village. You need to stop forgetting about what we're doing in New Zealand and what we're doing in Australia, and just saying who are the cool people and what they're doing. And they could be in India, they could be in China, they could be in England, they could be anywhere. Make sure you're connected with the cool people.
Right. Now, are you due down here anytime soon, Bill?
Yeah, I'm planning on coming in September. I'm just fixing the dates, but I will be running a True Australia, which I'll be working with Greg Savage on that, and we're hoping the RCSA are going to be back in that. So we'll be running an Australian event probably in Melbourne in early October. I'm just looking at the timing in comparison to the World Cup. And I will also be running an event in New Zealand in Auckland. I really wanted to do it in Christchurch, actually, just to bring a bit of money into the local economy. But infrastructure-wise, it doesn't look like that's going to be possible. So I think we'll be doing that in Auckland, probably with my friend Richard Long and Paul Jacobs and Richard Westney and various people down in the region. And you come along and do a radio show. So we'll be there. I'm also talking quite closely with Kevin Wheeler, and it's my intention to speak at the Australasian Talent Conference as well this year. So I'll be out.
Great. Hey, well, we know Kevin Wheeler. He's a friend of Frog Live Radio. Bill Boorman, thank you for your time. Bill Boorman, he's not a thought leader. He just knows a hell of a lot about recruitment and what's going on social media.
I just do stuff. That's what you have to tell me.
And he does stuff.
Just do stuff and I break things, and that's the way that we work.
Thank you, Bill. Look forward to meeting you when you're down here. Really appreciate it. That's Frog Live Radio. Next month, I should say, we've got Jason Kerr, a famous Kiwi in the world of America who has the Quiet Agent. He's going to be speaking, and thank you for joining Frog Live Radio. Bye-bye now.